Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Central Kentucky TV Political Focus. We're glad to join us tonight. And again, we're talking about the election coming up on the 4th day of November. That's the day that you get to make your decision as to who you'd like to see in office. Tonight, we're talking about State Representative of the 50th District. And we've got the two candidates here tonight to tell you a little bit about why they're running, who they are, and to give you an informed decision as to how you can vote on the 4th of November. So before we get started, I want to introduce our candidates to you tonight. First, our challenger, Miss Audrey Hayden. Audrey, I want you to introduce yourself and tell us a bit about yourself.
Thank you, Kenny, so much for having us here tonight. My name's Audrey Hayden. I was born and raised here in Nelson County. I'm an 8th generation Kentuckian. Been here. Our family's been here since 1785. My husband and I live in Bardstown now. I grew up out in Cox's Creek, across the road from a dairy farm. And we live right in downtown Bardstown, and we practice law here in Bardstown. I am very proud that my practice is representing working families here in Nelson County, and I have had the opportunity to represent hundreds of people right here in our community. And I'm looking forward to talking with you more about some of the issues and the reasons I'm running.
All righty. Well, our incumbent right now, been in for a couple terms or so now, is Mr. David Floyd.
Thank you, Kenny. Good evening to everyone. I've been your state representative for 5 terms now. You might not know a whole lot about me, but I was born and raised here in Nelson County and on a farm just outside of Bardstown on Shepherdsville Road. My mom was Belle Floyd. She was a secretary at the school, the Bardstown City School, and then treasurer of the Board of Education. Dad worked in the distilleries. Went to Bardstown High School, graduated from there, and then went to the Air Force Academy. And from the Air Force Academy, I served in the Air Force for a while. Had a break in my service when I came back home to Bardstown. We had our first child here at Flagey, and then was and I also did some substitute teaching because we were laid off frequently during that time. But I went back into the Air Force and finished my career. I served in peace and in war. I was an operations officer and a pilot, and served in Operation Desert Storm. And now my wife is Sherry. Sherry is a teacher, or was a teacher. She taught at Bardstown Elementary School, and she taught at St. Joseph Elementary School, and here's where we raised our children. When we came back up, they were 2nd and 5th grade, and so our children grew up here in Bardstown and graduated. Mindy is the older of the two. She's a teacher in Jefferson County. The younger is Beth, and she's just finishing up her doctorate. And she's going to have a baby next month, our grandson. So we came back here in 1991, and then I retired from the Air Force. My family and I built and opened Windsor Gardens Assisted Living, and eventually added some other facets to that. And I have served with you as your state representative since the election in 2004. It's been a great honor to serve as your state representative, and I hope to continue to do the same. You may have met me or heard about me being in your community, Coffee with Dave, during the legislative sessions when I go out every Saturday during those sessions to meet with and be available to you if you wanted to come and talk about any issue, legislative updates. One of the great things that I've been able to do is go into the schools. In the 4th or 5th grade, we do the 5th grade now because Senator Higdon and Jimmy and I are good friends, and he wanted to join me in the classroom to talk about representative democracy. And so I have, if your child has been going through the 4th or 5th grade in Nelson County, and before that also in other counties that we represented, then we would have been there talking about representative democracy. I think the key phrase they'll remember is "we the people." Thanks.
All right. Well, Audrey, obviously a few months ago or a year ago or some time ago, you decided you'd like to be state representative, and there had to be a reason you thought of that or some reason you had the motivation to do that. What made you decide you wanted to run for this office?
Well, Kenny, I've always been interested in public service. That's something that has always been dear to my heart, and I think that having a voice in Frankfort for all people in Nelson County is very important. When I decided to run, it was because I felt like we needed to keep moving the Commonwealth forward in the right direction, and that has has become even more important to me now that my husband and I have found out we're expecting our first child in the spring. So certainly want to ensure that the great state of Kentucky is a place where families like us are able to raise children, send them to school, all those kind of things. And it became even more clear to me more recently when the Republicans laid out their plan in their so-called handshake with Kentucky. They've laid out their priorities if they were to take the state house, and they've modeled that off after the state of Alabama. And there's some great things in Alabama. I like Gulf Shores. I like their football. But they rank behind us in education. They rank behind us in personal income growth. And they rank behind us in economic development. So that is not the direction I'd like to see the Commonwealth go. And I believe that the people of Nelson County need a voice in Frankfort who will fight for them and fight for working class families. And that will be my top priority in Frankfort.
All right. Well, David, 5 terms ago, you made a decision to run as well. And obviously every term you make the decision whether you want to run again or not. And you've done that again this year.
Yes.
Tell us why.
Well, I would like to continue to serve the people of Nelson County. The district was reduced. We used to have parts of Bullitt and Spencer County, but the population growth here in Nelson County has been such that we have our own legislative district. It's just Nelson County in the 50th district right now. And when along through these times, you will probably have received from me a questionnaire about questions that are before the General Assembly. And so I would send out sometimes 10,000 and occasionally 1,000 or 2,000, and I'd get responses back. And on these responses to these questions that were before the General Assembly, we agreed 70–80% of the people who responded to these questionnaires, we were completely in agreement. There were those questions where the people of Nelson County in this district were about 50-50, and it just so happened I was about 50-50 on those two. So I think I genuinely represent the values of Nelson County, this district, and would like to continue to do that. And I've met so many good people during these years. You know, you get all around the county. I thought I knew Nelson County before, but I've mentioned already the Coffee with Dave, where I go to different parts of, in this case, Nelson County, at the place where people typically congregate. But I've also met them not during the legislative session. You know, I've made a lot of good friends in New Haven and Howardstown and New Hope and up in Fairfield and Bloomfield and out 245, Samuels area. Met a whole lot of good people, and they're very comfortable with the service that I've given them, and I hope to be able to continue to do that. Also, we have a very good working relationship. Our state senator, Jimmy Higdon, and I are good friends. We truck pool to and from Frankfort sometimes, although his schedule is longer than mine. And so we don't do it as much as we can. But we also work very well. We've got a great team here with the county judge executive, the magistrates, the mayor and city councils, the board of commissioners in New Haven, the mayors of the various communities. And we're all working toward the same sorts of thing. And I think I have a great understanding for all the areas of Nelson County. You know, I have also a voting record. And the voting record, I think, bears out everything that I've been telling you, that we share the same values. You know, I'm endorsed once again by Kentucky Right to Life. I'm endorsed by the NRA for Second Amendment reasons. But I'm also endorsed by the Association of General Contractors. I'm endorsed by the NFIB, the National Federation of Independent Businessmen, and I have a 100% voting record for them, and that's one of the reasons they endorse me. You know, and those things and several others that I haven't mentioned, those things revolve around jobs, and they recognize that the work that I do in the General Assembly on your behalf and the principles that I bring to that job as state representative have a focus on the things that get people working and keep them working.
Okay. Well, Audrey, obviously when you decided to run, and since you've been on the campaign trail, you've been listening to a lot of issues going on in the county. What do you see as the issues in the county that's really burning with people or burning with you?
Well, I've knocked on thousands of doors, and I'm going to keep on doing that until November 4th. And the number one thing that people are concerned about is jobs. You know, we're fortunate in Nelson County we do not have as high of unemployment as in some other counties, but everyone's worried about, you know, are we going to have good quality jobs coming to Nelson County, and how are we going to attract and keep those businesses here? The county judge has done a great job here in Nelson County working to bring some of those businesses here. And up in Frankfort, there's some things we can do to continue attracting those kind of businesses. The legislature passed several things that have been very beneficial to Nelson County, specifically House Bill 445, which is the Bourbon Barrel Tax Reinvestment Credit. That's created jobs right here at Barton's, and those are high quality union jobs right here in our community, high paying jobs with good benefits. That's a huge benefit to our community. We've also got the Bardstown distillery, the new distillery that's coming out to the industrial park this year. Those will also be excellent high paying jobs as well. We've got to continue to do those kind of things. We've got some great incentives out there for small business owners, and our downtowns in New Haven, Bloomfield, and Bardstown in our incorporated cities are booming. You know, when you go to some of these other small towns, there's lots and lots of empty storefronts. And I've had friends who visited us from out of town and have commented, "I can't believe how many people are downtown on a Saturday afternoon." We are so fortunate to have that. We've got to continue to support our small business owners. With tax credits and with other incentives. Those are all things that I would prioritize. And unfortunately, this last time the session had the opportunity to take up expanding the public-private partnership legislation, the P3 as they call it, and that was legislation that was endorsed by the Chamber of Commerce and did pass, but unfortunately it was vetoed due to an amendment that was added later on in the process, and that would have been something that would have also created jobs. The Chamber seemed to think it was a good thing too. That would have allowed us to use some innovative financing on some of our transportation projects that we already have the P3 legislation for other kinds of projects. That's something I would have supported in the legislature, and I'd like to see them take that up again this year, see if we can't get that moving without amendments being added that are going to unfortunately stall that kind of legislation. So that's the first issue I've heard from a lot of voters on. The second issue I've heard from a lot of voters on as well is about the minimum wage. Many voters I have talked to work full-time for $7.25 an hour, and they can't afford to live without government subsidies. I read recently that Walmart employs 28,000 people in Kentucky, and it's estimated that their employees receive $147 million in government benefits. And that's money that we could use to pay 2,000 teachers in our schools. That's money we could use to put back into the budget. There's, to many, many things we could do. It's based on estimates. You would need to earn $11.70 per hour in Nelson County to be able to afford fair market rent. And that's defined as no more than 30% of your income being used for your rent and utilities. That's for a 2-bedroom apartment. So you think about a mom with 2 kids. And that's higher than what anyone's even talking about raising the minimum wage to. And that's something that I think is we've got to take up in the next legislature. Unfortunately, House Bill 1 passed the House, did not pass the Senate this time. That would have also included equal pay for women, which is something that's near and dear to my heart. But that's an issue that we've got to address. We've got a serious problem with poverty here, and it disproportionately affects women. It disproportionately affects moms. 1 in 4 kids in Kentucky live in a home where one parent earns the minimum wage. There's other things we can do to support some of those workers. The governor in his budget this time extended the daycare subsidies to include some new families, which is a great thing for working families, but we've got to do better for them. Lifting people out of poverty makes a difference all the way up, for their children and future generations. So that is something that I would take up in the legislature. And the third area that I would focus on is education. My grandparents are both retired educators. They taught for 27 years. My grandfather worked at the school board. He couldn't get enough of the school after he retired. My mom's a 5th grade teacher. 2 of my uncles are teachers, 2 of my aunts. I could go on and on. And I've spoken with lots and lots of teachers out on the campaign trail and parents of school children. I have been endorsed by the Kentucky Education Association and Better Schools Kentucky. And that is something that we've got to focus on, improving our schools. And the Republicans will tell you that charter schools are the answer. My sister-in-law teaches at a charter school in New York, so I am very familiar with how charter schools work. And she even agrees with me that charter schools are not the answer for Kentucky. We've got to fund the schools that we've got, number one. And fortunately, we got some new textbook funding for teachers this year. Before that, my mother had a textbook in her classroom that had been there since I was in 5th grade. That's how old it was. So we're doing better on that front, but we need to continue to allow our teachers to innovate in a way that they can do within their classrooms. And that's why I think that the Districts of Innovation program that is through the Department of Education is an excellent way to do that. They've been testing that out in some of the districts. It allows teachers to try new things and not be afraid to innovate in their schools as they exist. And if there are ideas and there are philosophies that are working in other schools, then we need to bring those to our public schools, and we need to address that. And that is an area that I would like to see us take up and to continue to improve. We have moved up substantially in our education rankings, but it's still not good enough. I'm very proud of my public school education. I graduated from Nelson County High School. I would like to see my children attend the same kind of quality schools that we can hope for our children, and those would be my top 3 priorities in the legislature.
All righty. Well, David, you obviously there's a lot of issues out there. You have some priorities that you are concerned about.
Of course, I'm very sensitive to the needs that local officials bring to me, and that's, I mentioned already that we work very closely together. One of the things that I hear about most often, of course, has to do with jobs, and that is the infrastructure that's around here. You know, we've made a priority, Jimmy and I have, of making sure that road construction funds that come to Nelson County are at least as competitive as any other county in the state with regard to population. And so we've been able to do that. Since I was elected, we've moved forward on 31E. The reconstruction of the middle is complete. The rebuilding of 31E to the northern section up to the Salt River Bridge is underway, should be complete within 2 or 3 years. We have some other infrastructure needs. 150 over to Springfield is one of the most traveled roads around, competes with 31E very favorably. And so we need to help ourselves with the wider lane, wider bridge over the Bluegrass Parkway on 150 and all the way out to St. Catherine. So the infrastructure is important. We need an additional bypass. I don't know if you noticed it when 245 was being rebuilt. They had to close it for a few days. It was a nightmare everywhere else, which really just points to the importance of that bypass between 31E, well actually I-65 and all the way over to US 150. And I remember some magistrates came up to my office about 3-4 years ago, and they brought with them a 3x5 card with all their priorities, and every one of those has been met. Now we have I got into the budget this last time a scoping study for the western bypass, and now it's as you know, from the time it's in the scoping study to completion is 10 years.
Yeah.
But it's got to start somewhere. And of course, remember we compete with 119 other counties in this state for those things. Roads infrastructure is very important and will always be. And again, your representative needs to be very close to the local officials to make sure that we have our heads on straight with regard to those needs. I wanted to address just for a little bit the minimum wage, and that's one of the concerns you had mentioned, Kenny, the concerns we might have during a campaign, and I anticipate a very clean campaign, but there's a group called Kentucky Family Values that has put out the word that I voted against the minimum wage, but you need to, if you check the facts on this, I voted for an increase in the minimum wage in 2007, and it was a graduated minimum wage that came up to the federal level, and then the deal was, with the House majority and with the Senate, the deal was that we would lock it, we would tie it to the federal minimum wage. And so that was the deal. And the minimum wage goes up about every 5 years. The last time it took 9 years for it, and we're coming up on 7, and it'll go up again. And I think Kentucky, with the cost of living here compared nationally, the minimum wage nationally would be good for Kentucky. It's not good enough for what you call a living wage. But then again, most minimum wage jobs aren't for people as a sole breadwinner in the family. And, it does have an impact. Minimum wage philosophy, we have the minimum wage. So whether you like it or not, that's what we have to deal with. you can understand that if the minimum wage said we're going to make it $100, well, that would impact things. It would be so, and at $50, it would impact things very negatively. So, but the point is, I did vote for the minimum wage increase in 2007, and the deal was that we would freeze it to the tie it to the federal minimum wage. And so that's one of the reasons that we joined together to vote against that bill. Now, the other piece of that was it was inserted into that bill for political purposes, Kenny, and that was the equal pay for women. I voted for every resolution that Mary Lou Marzian has put forward on equal pay from the time I was first in there in 2005. And of course, this was inserted into the minimum wage, and I've already been through that. The point is that the thing that disturbs me about, and it's not Audrey, and it's not her family, because she's not doing it, but they will do it. And it's those half-truths that concern me, the things that turn a campaign nasty. For example, they made some calls into the area on the budget bill. They said that I voted against teachers and I voted against law enforcement. But of course, that was the original bill that was in the House, which raised the debt ratio in Kentucky to the highest it's ever been. And most all of us voted against it, and it was right along party lines. So it went over to the Senate, it came back, and then they had a free conference committee report, as we always do, and I voted for the final budget with a debt ratio that was much more reasonable and in tune with where we are right now. So those sorts of things are troublesome when it comes to a campaign. And as I said the other evening at the Farm Bureau, you know, I anticipate a very clean. I saw your first ad. It was a wonderful ad, very, very, very positive. I love that. So I do look forward to the rest of the campaign.
Audrey, you have any responses to any of that, or?
Well, I would just like to point out that the average worker who's receiving minimum wage is working full time, and it's a 25-year-old woman who's supporting at least one child. So these are jobs that people are struggling to support a family on. Some of them are fortunate enough to have two income earners in the home, but not all of them. So that is something that I certainly bear in mind when I think about these kind of jobs, and the fact that in my practice I represent many, many people who work for minimum wage. And they are working full time, and many of them do have children. Some of them have spouses, some of them don't. Some of them receive child support, some of them don't. And regardless of whether or not it's tied to the federal wage, we do still have the right here in Kentucky to raise it if the legislature chooses to, and that is something I would support. It has been 7 years since it's been raised, and I don't have a whole lot of faith in anybody getting anything done up in Washington to address it up there. So sometimes we got to take things into our own hands here at the state level.
I forgot to point out also that the bourbon barrel tax credit, you know how political stuff works in Frankfort. I was in the minority in the House, and I was approached to present the bourbon barrel tax credit 5 years ago perhaps, and presented it, and of course it wouldn't go anywhere with my name on it. So the next year I got a Democrat, Linda Belcher, to do it, and we tried several years, and finally, as Audrey pointed out, we were successful. And that's also partly because of two things. One, the Kentucky Distillers Association was instrumental in getting that compromise done. It was inserted into the final provisions of the budget bill. It was a great victory with no harm, no foul to any of the taxes that go. I think it's $125 million in the barrel tax that goes to the state and to various local governments and schools. And so it was a great victory. But the other thing that we did was I created the Bourbon Trail Caucus within the General Assembly for both senators and representatives who live in counties where there is a distillery. And so having that sort of a caucus to advance those things has made a difference, and I hope to continue to work with them in that.
Well, Audrey, as a wannabe lawyer years ago, you obviously went to law school and became a lawyer.
I'm not a wannabe anymore.
Well, you're not a wannabe. I'm a wannabe. I'm just saying, what was it like to be going through law school and getting into the legal profession? Obviously, you've enjoyed it.
I've really enjoyed it. My father's an attorney, and I grew up. My mother worked in the office when I was little. She actually worked on Friday afternoon and had me on a Sunday, and as soon as I was old enough, I went right back to the office. They used to laugh when I was little that I was going to talk like my dad, and like he was dictating and say period out loud or comma out loud, because I spent a lot of time at the office. I always wanted to be an attorney. I've always enjoyed helping people. I've always enjoyed the law. And that's something I really, really enjoyed in law school, was kind of getting to dig into what cases mean, what statutes mean, and how we interpret the law. And obviously, as we see on the Supreme Court, there are broad ways to interpret the law, and even here in Kentucky, the Kentucky Supreme Court finds some interesting ways to interpret the law that I think are sometimes not exactly what the legislature had in mind, and sometimes they are. So I have enjoyed practicing law, and I'm fortunate to practice with my husband and my father, so it gives us a lot of flexibility to work together. And so far, my husband and I have been married 4 years, and we've worked together 4 years, and we've hung in there.
Well, that's fantastic. Well, David, you've also had a job that I've envied as a former Air Force veteran. You're a U-2 pilot. Is it lonely up there?
Well, you're all alone. It is, of course, you go out in a pressure suit. They borrowed our pressure suits for the first Challenger flight, in fact, but they've gotten a lot better ones since then. That was just a short flight for them in the Challenger. But yeah, I was in a crew aircraft for the longest time. I was in a KC-135, and then applied for and was accepted into the U-2 program, which is a high altitude, single engine, single seat, powered glider, really, that Francis Gary Powers is probably the most famous U-2 pilot, shot down over Russia in the 50s, I think it was.
Yeah, 58.
And yeah, as a matter of fact, I just got back
Yeah, I told somebody you went to a U2 reunion. They didn't know you was a rock. You followed the Rockers band. That's the wrong kind of U2.
Well, that's a good Irish band, but we have an annual reunion in Arizona where several of us gather, old U2 pilots and sometimes associated staff. And we just have a good time together. We play some golf, and we eat, and we are fewer and fewer in number as years go by.
All right. Well, Audrey, like I said, before we finish up here, is there anything you want to say that the people don't know about you, or something you just want to make sure that the people do know that what you're standing for, who you are?
We were short and sweet to the point, weren't we?
Oh, absolutely. I like some of these. They get in here and battle back and forth, and that's good. I mean, you say what's on your mind, but tell us what else is on your mind before we get out of here. We don't want to leave the viewers with not knowing everything there is to know about Audrey Hayden.
Sure. Oh gosh, we could be here all day, couldn't we?
We got all kinds of tape.
The county judge told me last night. He said, "Well, you just had the gift of gab." I don't know if that's a good thing or not.
And you tell him, where'd you get it? Where'd I get it?
Yeah, right. I'm honored to be on the ballot this year. I'm very proud of the work we've put into this campaign and the campaign we've run so far. I've been fortunate to be supported by so many local people here in Nelson County. More than half the contributions I've received are from people who've contributed less than $100. So that's something I'm very, very proud of, that grassroots initiative. And I've been glad to meet voters at their homes and to meet them, where they live, and talk to them about the issues that are important to them. And that's something I look forward to continuing. I hope that the voters will pay attention to the issues as we go forward into November. And I'm always accessible. I've received many emails and calls from voters, and I look forward to talking to more people about the issues on their mind.
All right, Audrey. Well, David, I'll let you wrap things up here for us tonight, and tell us anything we don't know about you, or what you want to. Your final closing statement.
I appreciate you, Kenny, and I appreciate Channel 6 doing this. Of course, the people that get this are in the southern or southeastern part of the county and don't normally get the local cable television. And we can't afford the broadcast channels to talk to you out of Louisville. And so it's a great way to get to meet people. But as Audrey says, the best way is to do it face to face. And I know that we've had that opportunity for quite some time now. I very much enjoyed, and it's not so much that I can talk to you as that I can listen to you. I think you've noticed that when we are in the places in Culvertown and Fairfield and Highgrove and all over the county, that it's mostly just listening, and I gather from you what's on your mind and how you feel about things, and so I have learned a great deal from you, and I appreciate your input, and I hope to continue to serve you. I appreciate your support in the past and hope I can count on it in the future. Thank you.
All right. Well, we appreciate both of you being here tonight, and again, we appreciate you tuning in. So for all of us here at Channel 6, Political Focus, Central Kentucky TV, we do appreciate Audrey Hayden, David Floyd, candidates for 50th District State Representative in Nelson County. So November the 4th is coming up. It's not that far away, so it's time for you to make a decision. So hopefully we're doing our job to educate and inform. So for all of us here at Channel 6, this is Kenny Fogel saying so long. See you next time here on Political Focus. Take
And
care, everybody.
vote.
Yeah.
And vote.
Whoever you vote for, go vote. That's right.
Thank you, Kenny.
You're very welcome.